Hello everyone, it's been a long time since I've had an update for you, so I thought I would try a different format this time, make it a little bit easier. So it's good to see all of you again. This is a update for Walking Together and Global View, our Ecuador and US partnerships. I am contemplating today a scripture, Isaiah 58, which was featured in Greece Baptist Church's worship service this morning, and it has me moved to speak. So I am going to share a little bit with you about what's going on here in Ecuador, and hopefully this finds you well. So the scripture I'm talking about is Isaiah 58. Shout out, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. The picture you will see here is me in front of the suspended mine up in Rio Blanco. On the 20th of January, we went with some government representatives from the province of Azuay and the national government of Ecuador to evaluate removing some material and closing the suspended mine access and steps to remediate the toxic materials that were left behind. I don't have a great explanation for my silence the last few months, and I find it best to just call this a relaunch of my updates from Ecuador with a renewed sense of authenticity and commitment to speak from my heart. I heard a sermon, like I said, on Isaiah 58 this morning, thanks to the magic of Zoom from Greece Baptist Church near Rochester, New York, and I've decided it fits well with what moves my heart right now. I feel called to speak with an authentic voice, a little less filtered, and being true to my mission and passion here. This next slide you see is an image created with AI, and it reflects the national strike in the September and October of 2025. Indigenous communities here stood up to countless human rights abuses, and those abuses were condemned internationally by the United Nations, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, many other international organizations. As you know, in August, I set about my mission here in Ecuador to reimagine ways to share the comfort and care the divine has for all of us, especially for those in this world who might otherwise feel like there's no comfort to be found. And after more than 6 months here, with many ups and downs, I feel more committed to this passion than ever. And to be honest, the Paro Nacional, the national strike in Ecuador between the months of September and October, broke my heart. At least 5 provinces called a general strike, closed roads, spoke out against authoritarianism rising here. Indigenous bodies place themselves between injustice and their communities, and several peaceful demonstrators were murdered in the streets. Communities I've come to know well suffered hundreds of injuries, imprisonment, frozen bank accounts, and ultimately Indigenous leaders called an end to the strike after a month so they could heal their communities, regain strength for another day. The government stopped their surge, and things have returned to an uneasy peace. And I've been processing all of this while witnessing events back in the United States with peaceful demonstrators being injured by the hundreds, immigrants detained without process, and those who would come between the government and the oppressed murdered on video for us to see. So I've been regrouping, much like my Indigenous friends here, healing, gaining strength, shaking the alternating of anger and despair, finding joy and courage once again, the work continues, and I'm reimagining for 2026, inviting you to reimagine with me. And what you're looking at now are some quinoa plants, not to be confused with quinoa that you eat. On the left, there's a plant propagated by an on-site garden nursery in Rio Blanco. It was planted a year ago during one of our many reforestation trips, and it's growing strong. I took this picture in January. And these plants take about 5 years to mature. Once they do, like the tree-sized shrub on the right, they function to bring water and animal life to the area and restore the paja grasses that help the unique Paramos ecosystem thrive. And Global View Foundation seeks to plant an audacious number of these trees, 30,000 of them in Rio Blanco. So the community of the Rio Blanco and surrounding parish of Moyuturo have been meeting monthly with the governor of the local province of Azuay to demand that the government fulfill an obligation regarding the mine which was suspended back in 2018, removing the abandoned material, closing the suspended mine entrance, and assisting in restoring the land, water, and social structure damaged over decades. It's a complicated process, but I've been really honored to accompany the community in each of these meetings. The government sees benefits in removing this abandoned material and closing the mine entrance because of national mandates to aggressively prevent illegal mining activities in the Andes, which is also integrated with drug cartels that increase violence in the country. Government motivations are really complex, and accusations of communities being complicit in illegal mining activities and the government corruption involved. It's all a mess. Still, this new momentum is hopeful. And we hope that local and national governments will help fund restoration efforts. So Global View Foundation has already planted 4,200 quinoa plants, and these plants are essential for the Paramos ecosystem there. We work towards this audacious goal of 30,000 of these plants, and I think we can do it. This next slide you see is an advertisement for an ancestral medicine workshop in Quito with our dear friend Nancy Piawaje. She's a shamana of the Amazon rainforest, Ecuador people. She's teaching women's health workshops in March, and it's a significant event, bringing awareness to the Ecuador natural medicine and providing the shamana support for building an ancestral health center in her community. Now, my first encounter with Ecuador was in the rainforest community of the Ecuador, who have faced generations of difficulty due to predatory oil extraction, palm oil farming, and illegal logging operations. Spirituality of the rainforest is what first drew me to Ecuador, and the wise woman, shamana Nancy, is the teacher of all the ancestral knowledge for her community. I'm working with Global View to magnify her voice and our audacious goal to build a facility for her to practice as her ancestral teachings in her community. We're supporting her as she teaches workshops throughout Ecuador to help accomplish that goal. Next thing I want to talk about is the Marathon of Poetry for Peace in 2026. So on October 22nd, 2026, Global View will lead ambassadors from all over South and North America and presenting poetry for the purpose of peace. As in prior years, our purpose is to change public places, often portrayed in today's media as places of violence, to places of peaceful readings and other artistic expressions. We want to create a cartography of tenderness. So each month, members from Global View meet with ambassadors from the US and Canada and Ecuador and other countries from all over Latin America to plan the next Marathon of Poetry. It's more than one event, but a series of events culminating in an intercontinental marathon of artistic expression all over North and South America. I was invited to be an ambassador of peace during the 2024 Marathon of Poetry, and my own personal message still stands. What we might not be able to change in this world by debate and argument, we can certainly change through artistic expression, because it's through art that we're able to change hearts. I was given the honor to invite a colleague, Reverend Cheryl Frank of Brighton, New York, to be an ambassador for this effort. She's truly an agent of peace in our midst, and she joins many other ambassadors of poetry and peace as we create a cartography of tenderness, a new map for the world to see that features public places dedicated to tenderness, in contrast to these maps that show areas of violence. Special thanks to the dedicated members of the Marathon of Poetry for Peace Steering Committee, and please expect to hear a lot more in coming months. Next, I want to address the case of 5-year-old Liam. The news around the small Ecuadorian child, Liam, was detained and used as bait to capture his father, hit Ecuador harshly. Human rights abuses by governments worldwide are named loudly here in Ecuador, and this event was no exception. After 6 months in Ecuador, I know no other way than to name human rights violations like this one, clearly, with no hesitation. I am observing all the terrible events in the United States from abroad. And I can tell you I do not get my news from any of the 24/7 cable news networks. When I was serving as a pastor, I had the luxury of not speaking against politicians by name under the pretense of neutrality or something. Serving abroad, seeing the U.S. through the eyes of the vulnerable, I'm no longer having that luxury. Indeed, I have a duty to speak out against oppressive governments by name, including both Trump in the United States and Noboa here in Ecuador. The case of Adrian Conejo and his 5-year-old son Liam has upset many in Ecuador, along with multitude of these other children who have been detained in horrible conditions in detention centers. This has been going on for months. In August, a young Ecuadorian mother named Martha was shipped from New York City with her 2 children, ages 6 and 19, and detained in the same detention center in Dilley, Texas. All were deported to Ecuador without much news about them. The conditions are cruel and inhumane. And as a mother, a grandmother, and Christian, I cannot be silent in the days of such horrors. And shout out as Isaiah admonishes God's people to do so in the scripture I quoted at the title of this update. When is it enough? It must stop. My appeal to all who might listen is that we allow our hearts to be broken enough to see human rights violations clearly and to speak out in truth. As we allow our hearts to break, I beseech you, do not fall into the silence of despair, because there's a whole wide world speaking out clearly. None of us is alone. I can switch to lighter things now. This picture is a hummingbird. My godson's family had an unexpected visitor a couple weeks ago, and one of the native hummingbirds excitedly flew into their house, and after gently capturing it, the oldest daughter allowed her toddler brother to hold it briefly before releasing it again into the wild where it belongs. I do think of everyone back home, as many of you are facing the brutality of below freezing temperatures. This time last year, it was mild enough for me to take a Saturday night hike through Letchworth Park, and I have a great deal of empathy for those of you facing the harsher winter this year. January and February in Ecuador is part of the rainy season, and though the Andes of Ecuador can get quite warm on sunny days, when it's cloudy and rainy, it struggles to get above 60. Still, I feel spoiled by the spring-like conditions and have taken it as a spiritual practice to listen to the birds before I get out of bed each morning. There are more than 130 species of hummingbirds here, and the largest will chirp loudly enough for me to hear in the mornings, without my hearing aids, alongside a local blackbird here in Cuenca. And I tell myself the birds are singing, "It's a beautiful day," before I go about my business. An update on teaching. Teaching English keeps me very busy on top of all the community work I'm doing. I enjoy my students a great deal, and I've recently encouraged them to play the card game Go Fish as a way to practice the English question, have you got? You'd be surprised how confusing it is to a non-native speaker as to why we add the word got when it seems so redundant. Anyway, it's a busy life, but I really enjoy it. Another aspect of my life here is financial reality. So the projects I work on in Ecuador are needing tens of thousands of dollars, to be really honest, in order to fully fund them. And rather than get discouraged, we just keep appealing to organizations and individual donors like you. And this is a spiritual transition for me also. I'll try to explain it the best I can. I find this work to be endlessly exhilarating and equally, sometimes, absolutely frustrating. I say this because working in nonprofit activism requires repetitive realizations that we just cannot fund all the activities and projects we hope for. Yesterday, I had to say no to a trip to Rio Blanco to meet with government representatives because we just didn't have the money to hire a driver this time. And part of my adjustment to life in Ecuador is accepting reality. Sometimes I can't find funding for something. These efforts are sometimes put together with something like duct tape and Band-Aids, and we do what we can, when we can. There are days I can accept this reality, and sometimes I beg God for the serenity to understand our limits. My own acceptance of these things is a work in progress. And I'm mindful of the financial stresses and the realities in the US these days. During my visit in December, I was shocked by the prices of things. I know many are struggling to make ends meet, and the realities there are sharp. I've met Ecuadorians, actually, who had legal status and worked in the United States and decided to return to Ecuador mainly because the cost of living in the United States was just too great. I know many of you have trimmed a lot of your discretionary spending. Some of you who were considering taking an immersion trip have decided to pause that indefinitely. I get it. I really, really do. So all of this being said, if you decided you would like to fund a single tree for $1, helping us reach our audacious goal of 30,000 trees in Rio Blanco, I'd be grateful. You can consider donating through the GoFundMe link that I'm showing here. It's probably the easiest way to support what we do right now. Another way to support me, really, is to continue praying. Or even send me a text message or email from time to time. I truly thrive on your encouragement more than you will ever know. So to close, thank you. I'm just so grateful for each and every one of you back home. I send you all of my love and encouragement. I keep a candle lit every day for those whom I love, both here in Ecuador and in the US. Because really, what connects us is so much more powerful than what would divide us. Un fuerte abrazo. Ciao.